Can I go
Hello,
get mine?
everyone,
Go get
and
mine.
welcome to the MSP Initiative Live. It's Thursday. The week's almost done, and you didn't even know. You just blinked, and we were here. Got a couple of familiar faces on the show today. We got the one, the only, Mr. Beard. I'm sorry, Mr. Lee. Matt Lee, who's our friend over at PAX8. We have Pete from Equilibrium. He's our resident marketing guru that comes on the show from time to time. And I'm going to go over some quick housekeeping like I normally do for everyone that's familiar with the show. And if you're not, then you'll learn a few things. So MSPinitiative.com, under sessions, every single session that we've ever done from March of 2020 until now, including this one, will be available in podcast format and video format under the sessions page. If you have your favorite podcatcher, we also publish these on there as well. We did complete our MSP community block party, our most recent one, at ThreatLocker Zero Trust World, which is a highly successful event. I also heard Nerdio's event down in Cancun was very successful. But if you want to catch up on the block party, little video and some event photos, you can see all the funniness there. Last thing I'm going to throw out there, Channel Strong. That's our very fun bus tour, and we're coming to Texas first. So if you happen, here is the whole year up front. If you're in any one of these areas, especially ones further on in the year, we're still looking for MSP hosts to help us in their parking lot. And who knows, you might find somebody with a beard on the road from time to time. He made this, and other interesting people. All that aside, welcome to Thursday. How are you doing, gentlemen?
Fantastic.
Well,
Where'd you get that hat, Pete? You had to dig that out of the closet, buddy?
no, man, this is one of my cowboy hats.
All right. Yeah.
This is the range. This is when you're working on the range. This is a range hat, man.
So this is what happens when you go to Texas, right?
That's right. We're getting ready for Texas.
I got you.
Maybe I'll wear my Stetson for Texas.
There you go. I don't know if that fits my complexion, but I hear you. Matt, we got the bald thing going, so all good there. I don't think you get stopped in security nearly as much as I do.
Not as much. But if you go ahead of me, I have much less chance, right? So like if you're just one line in front, then I just don't think they have the queuing capability to take both.
Well, it's funny. Alex Stanners on my side says that he came up long ago that there's a rule of 5. As long as there's a 5-person buffer between anyone and me, that other person won't get rolled in. Won't get rolled into the stop. But if
That's
you're
just because they like
5,
you, George. They like you.
If you're under 5, then bad things can happen. So let's dig right into it, because I know we only have Matt for a short period of time. Matt, I'm going to drive right into this. Our mutual buddy and friend, and he's actually pretty tall if you haven't met him in person, but I'm a short guy anyway. Dom Kirby, he posted this, that Microsoft
we were shooting B-roll for our show. And I actually had to stand up on my tippy toes to put him in a headlock. I was like, damn it, he's tall.
He's really tall. He's really tall. Matt, for people who don't understand what DAP and Gdap is, can you kind of make it layman's term? I don't know if people understand what this is and what's coming down here.
So, short story is when you sign in to be a CSP, or when you're an MSP using a CSP, such as a PAX8 or whatever, and you're a partner, you are able to have your client click on a link that gives you access into their tenant as an administrator, right? And so it brings those two organizations together in a relationship in which you have full administrative rights. And to touch on the DAP, Gdap, because that's actually a relatively new thing with Microsoft. I was actually on the advisory for Gdap for the last 2 years. But Gdap is intending to fix the reason I wouldn't use them when I was an MSP. I didn't use DAP, and most MSPs probably are in a mixed bag, but a lot don't. And the reason is you couldn't always do everything in DAP. And you also can't restrict the permissions in the sense that if Matt Lee and my MSP happens to support, let's say 600 clients, those 600 clients, any one of my technicians I gave access through DAP had full access into those clients. No carving out of that, no setting what their parameters are, no setting rails.
So basically it's all or nothing.
Yep. And so Gdap is a reimagining of that, in which you are garnered a total quote, kind of all over God rights, but you can carve out smaller pieces of those God rights and give them to groups inside your organization. Right. And so what this means is that instead of me saving a client's credentials for admin at client.onmicrosoft.com or admin at their domain.com, whatever, and then storing that and storing a 2FA in IT Glue or storing a 2FA somewhere else, instead of that, I'm not faking an identity anymore. I'm me, and I'm signing into the right amount of resources that I should have access to. So back to your article from Dom, that we've done the back history of that, because that's essentially what DAP is this delegated administration, the ability to log in as me, which is great because when you're dealing with security, one of the things you want is immutability. You want to say George Bardisi is the one that signed in and fixed that connection for Teams.
Not just admin signed in and did something.
Yeah, from random IP that we might be able to track back to Matt, or maybe he was on his Starbucks hotspot and it'll never so you get into that side of it. So Gdap is a huge fix to that. But because of that risk, and because Microsoft is trying to reduce their surface area, and maybe, but anyways, we won't get into the other conjecture. But Microsoft made an announcement.
I'm gonna pause you right here, Matt. I mean,
okay.
Time and time again, we're running into people who are like, hey, I don't want to create a user account into every 365 account for every single text.
Exactly.
And they're just centralizing the MFA challenge, right?
Yep.
Like they're sending it to a phone number. They're sending it to an SMS option.
Yep.
And then just to simplify it because they don't want 10, 15, 20 users per tenant.
Yeah. Yeah. And now with DAP or Gdap, you're not placing those users. And it really is this. I used to scream this to Microsoft. Like, it blew my mind. I'm like, you have a perfectly GWTable down to the last little digit, Matt Lee, and you're going to make me create mini Matts in everybody's organization. This is stupid. Extend my Azure Active Directory as an external guest or through DAP. And so that's essentially what they've done, right? Is they've made it to where I'm now just me. My user is still my user. I'm signing into their stuff. I'm running their stuff. I'm taking administrative access to their stuff, but I'm still me. I'm still, inherently me. So my MFA is going to my cell phone. That's the problem for MSPs, right? You have to share the MFA, or it's going into a TOTP code that you're storing in, an IT glue right next to the password a lot of times, right? So it kind of defeats your two-factor. But short story is, this is so important because it brings it back to the unit of identifiability being George or Matt. Right.
So Dom's article, which I popped up earlier, is that Microsoft basically made the decision, hey, right now we give effectively Duo, who is pretty embedded in MSP land. I'd say a lot of people use them. I don't know what the percentage is, but
I use them. So yeah,
same. So they're saying that that's not good enough to have access to that. You actually still need the Microsoft MFA.
Yeah.
To actually have that capability. Like, do you have to do a double prompt, Matt? Do you have to do like one and then the other? Like, how does that work?
Or you'd have to, so the way you could do it, and I think you're being a little hyperbolous and I get it. But the way you would do it is you would turn off the CA condition. You'd make a special app in conditional access that does not have the Duo factor and has the additional factor from Microsoft, right? So there'd be the flow you would try to accomplish. And you would just tie it to those cloud apps like Microsoft Partner Center and things. So like, I see that, but what's interesting to note is the way Duo hooks in is through what's called a JSON template. Microsoft made that capability as additional security controls, quote unquote, but they only ever allowed one vendor to do it. And they never wanted to go forward. And I won't say what's under NDA, but you could imagine that decisions that came to why you would stop would either be cost, maybe unintended consequences. And so if you get to that position, you're not adding other vendors, you kind of are creating some challenges for yourself in the market probably too. And so I would have to imagine
Duo probably was there from day zero and just said, put us in, man. I don't care what you do after
they were the first one to ask. And like I said, I don't want to share the private information, but I don't think it went well. And I think there are some challenges to the scalability of adding 100 other vendors to that same position. And now Microsoft security could just be completely usurped down to the partner level by somebody having a miscoding in the way their XML is handled back and forth on the SAML, or right. Like you get into these things where the risk is being injected. So like Dom and I kind of kicked this around when we first started talking about it, but there's conjecture, either one of a couple of things. This is what we landed on. They're both conjecture. So everybody calls this Matt's opinion. Don't take anything more than that. Right. But the first one would be, they may have found a security vulnerability in the methodology in general. And that might not be good enough. Now, it might be good enough to solve the problem here, but when they're talking about now extending it down to 1,000 people suing them, it's a little different, right? And so I think it could be that. I don't believe that's the case. I think what they're doing, and Microsoft's shown this over the last 2 years, I think they're hardening surface areas where they can harden surface areas. I think it's just in general. I think they want security wins. I think they're starting to take to heart some of these challenges of, there's this transition, right? 100 years ago when electricity was still forming, it's not fair, but you know what I mean? And I'm also rounding off the timeline, but when electricity was big in the Industrial Revolution, you used to have a chief of electricity, right? That would run the plant, that made sure you had enough power, that made sure that the phases were functioning, all of that planning. Now it's commoditized. It didn't get any more simple. It just got moved into a larger set of hands, right? And now it's being run, and you can expect three-phase power is going to be 110, right? And you can so the point is, just like in this same case, I think Microsoft is becoming those utilities in some ways. Microsoft, Google, AWS, I mean, the 3 or 4 major players, but I think Microsoft's just hardening their surface area.
So Brent pops in and says, how do you do this new association now with Gdap rather than DAP? I'm sure there's a new process in place.
There's a conversion. I actually haven't been in tune with those advisories. Microsoft has a pretty hard line of it being an MSP advisory, and I'm not an MSP now. And so I've shifted to the vendor side. But on the original conversations, it was very much a conversion. My argument was to make it as automated as possible, to make it bring over existing use state. Now, the challenge is, if you're doing something like that, you're still kind of in this position where you want to improve security posture. If you had everybody having access to everything, and you're making this brand new, beautiful system that says, now I can carve out that access. Now I can give granular access. Now I can only give access to be a help desk function instead of an admin, or now I can only give access. Then you have this like real kind of paradox where you have to decide, do I just piss people off that aren't there, the long tail, the ones that don't understand security, and move everybody over with no permissions? Or, right, because it would force you to do something, would force you to fix and give your technicians permission of the right scale, then it's on you to screw up, right? Or do you convert them over with exactly what they have and give it a sunset provision and so, like, I don't know where they landed on some of those conversations. They're heading towards a position of making this a very easy transition, but I'm not sure. I'm sorry.
Okay, no worries. This is a good question. A good question.
Great question.
So,
yeah.
The other one that I think you were, from my understanding, Matt, you were early on as well, was the Microsoft Lighthouse and Defender and all that stuff. And I just saw, I think maybe it was even yesterday, that that's now kind of come to more of a general availability, if you would.
Yeah, I was early on in Lighthouse. We talk about this a lot, George, and I've got several sessions of this conversation, but the number of variables is getting smaller. By that I mean is, if you close your eyes and dream, and your new business starting up today, do you start up with metal in the closet and servers and infrastructure and software that you install and manually update and do, or do you probably buy one of 2 or 3 line of business SaaS applications and tie it into an identity of some sort, right? Like, so you see that being this overarching where we're heading. So if you take that forward, Microsoft, Google, AWS, it would be very beneficial for them to understand that might need a very different support structure in the future, right? And so you might not need the RMMs. You might not need some of the same tool systems that you use. You might work much more in a customer service ticket system than a PSA system that's trying to handle resources and capabilities. No, it's all the same stuff, same APIs, same breaks, same fixes, same experience, same everything. And so as you see that becoming that central space, Lighthouse attempts to try to be that catch there. The challenge is, it's being written by someone who doesn't understand MSPs. And I love them, but Microsoft's not been accused of that before.
Darren actually pops in and says, P.S. I'm not very happy, as in not good, that Defender is being offered with business premium licenses. Why is that, Darren? Because you got to turn off something else? I don't know what's going on. More security, right? Not less?
Well, I think Defender's coming a long way. I mean, is it there? No. Just 2 months ago, you could change the file name to a common file name that it uses, and it would just ignore it, right? Like, so there was somebody running, Meterpreter, just live against Defender. It was hilarious. But I will say, I think it's great that they are starting to think more about security. And I think what they're doing in the same way, and like, if you look at our industry and compare it to just accounting, if you will, right? Like, my accountant uses Thomson Reuters or one of a few main products, and that's it. And I don't know or care. And I only care about the experience and whether or not I'm paying the IRS more or less money, right? Like, that's ultimately what I'm judging it on. And I think we're heading down that path to where we're not going to make margin on Microsoft, like, not even us at PAX8. Like, we're going to not be a part of that supply distribution chain. I mean, I'm looking far in the future, I think. But if you think about that, that means we have to add different value props. We have to add different educational capabilities. We have to be able to make people with the same tools. If George brings his phone system and gives this to those people, and they can do more with those same tools than someone else could, you've added value on a system that was built to be able to distribute the load of those things, right? So think of those vendors that add value to Microsoft, that add value to that capability. I think that's where the market shifts to. And from an MSP perspective, it's adding those capabilities, but now they're just the same bolts. They bolt in with the same script,
So
right?
Matt,
Like,
for people who don't understand what's happening with the Microsoft, what used to be a free antivirus solution they gave out for free, they've now made it more of a commercial thing, right? And they've labeled it Defender. So if you weren't up with this is Microsoft's small business antivirus solution, for lack of a better term. And then Lighthouse is kind of been this 2-3 year project where Microsoft's effectively trying to roll out their RMM solution. I don't know if that's the right term.
BI/RMM of the future, if you will, right? Like if all the bolts are the same, find anomalies.
And I think that a lot of the guys who have the RMM solutions that have been out for a long, long time, but the big, in the MSP space, a lot of them have hooked in to Intune, to Defender, to Lighthouse, because effectively Microsoft has more access to put these things into the operating system than they do.
Yeah.
Is that, did I sum that up right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that's pretty fair. And it kind of goes back to the same point of, if you can add value to Microsoft and it's a gap they don't cover, then you kind of have that. Now, are we touching on whether or not Microsoft's in a monopolistic position in some ways? Well, maybe not.
What Darren thinks, trying to destroy the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, but I think, though, one of the things, if you talk about just like, if you take away the corporate aspect and the way this makes us feel and the drive towards it, the cool thing about Defender, and as shown by Microsoft's threat laboratories in the last couple of years, like they have more endpoints of gathering data than anyone in the world, right? Like when it comes to finding threats or looking at behaviors or gathering or making a change that gives you more telemetry, like they have more agents, right? Because they gave it as part of the OS since the beginning, essentially. And so you kind of get in this position that if you have the data and you're able to see this normalizing set of variables, then you can see data science, machine learning algorithms, and things like that driving very fast forward. Like one of the challenges of machine learning is the data is not normalized. And so there's so much work in that to make them make sense. But when you start getting less variables, inherently the data is more normalized, right? In the sense that you have less things to have to predict for and carve through their relationships and tie them together in some soft or hard way. And so I think that we're seeing Microsoft rise in their capabilities. I mean, if you look at how quickly they're responding to things, even like Ukraine, and saying, hey, this is what we know, this is what we're seeing, here's the telemetry, like that telemetry is possible by those kind of endpoint capabilities. So like, I think, take it with a grain of salt, but I also agree with Darren that God bless them, they'll probably find a way to make this painful for all of us and not valuable. So, sorry.
How many, it's interesting because you see all these going on, and the MSPs all have, their PSAs and RMMs, which then also act as like a distributor for endpoint protection. What do you see in the shift in that market? Is that going to affect, all the other brands that are out there? Do you think the MSPs are going to jump on board with this?
I mean,
okay.
Secondary scanner.
I ran Sentinel-1 with Defender. So a lot of the endpoint products that are starting to get this are able to kind of work in conjunction to some extent. Especially since if I'm in ecosystem, and let's say you fast forwarded to a point where people are doing SIM and are doing those kind of threat hunting things, Defender's a hell of a collector, and bringing that into vigilance. I know, what is it called? Dang it. What's Microsoft's SIM?
Sentinel?
Yes, thank you. Azure Sentinel, Sentinel-1. But yeah, Sentinel, and bring that into Sentinel, then you have a lot of that same place to put the user sign-in data, the correlation of all those things in that one place. So I think you'll see people run that. But back to your point, Pete, about like, will this change how we deliver it? The beauty of Lighthouse, if you're using 100% adoption. So the challenge is when people think cloud today, they think about moving their servers from their on-prem to Azure. That is not the cloud that we're talking about here. We're talking about modern. We're talking about the future of this, where the close your eyes and dream, start a business conversation. So if you're 100% bound to Azure Active Directory, your machines sign into Azure Active Directory, you're completely managed by Intune, you have autopilot full ingestion, you have the ability to wipe machines completely remotely, you have the ability to look at what a baseline is, you have the ability to set a minimum requirement before you can sign in, you have the ability to set conditional access policies and say, hey, if you're not on an Azure Active Directory sign machine with all these things, you can't even sign. So you have this like endemic, taking away some of the problems of compliance and security, because now the compliance is part of the actual whether you can touch the data, right? So it's kind of flipping that conversation on its head. And so if you think about that, then all I need to do to deliver Sentinel-1, if I'm going to add it in, it becomes an Intune policy. And guess what? It's the same Intune policy for tenant A, and for tenant B and for tenant C and for tenant D, each being different customers. And even more so, all I have to do to deploy it is 2 GUID changes in my script, which means as that becomes Lighthouse is nothing more than GUID changing scripts that go and roll through, right? Like that's what this is. That's what, you people that are building Roost. It's what, the PAX8 Pros do. It's what everyone that gets this is doing. It's funny. I was serving on an advisory council for a well-known company and a lot of well-known companies. But when I was on one of them, I was telling them, listen, this is my vision where we're going. And some of them just said, Microsoft pissed us off before. We're not doing that. Doesn't change the train in front of you, brother. I mean, it was just funny, but that's where we're heading. And it's not just Microsoft. This will be Google too. This will be Amazon. Like we're talking about the cloud manufacturers that understand identity already. They have extensibility into functions as a service capabilities. They have extensibility into platform as a service capabilities. And so you start seeing this is going to be the answer. I just happen to be a Microsoft centric guy. And as is most of the world right now, at least business wise. And so Google and Amazon will have their own flavors of these things as well. And if you ever got to a pure world where it was all SaaS, you could see Google actually having some strengths because their OS is nothing more than a browser, right? And so if you're already trying to reduce some of that infrastructural load and risk, and now you just have a Chromebook and it just goes to a stupid web browser, right? Like, so you can see people starting to win again in that side. But anyways, tangential.
So talking about current events, this is the last thing I had because I knew I only had Matt for a certain period of time. I'm not pumping anything out there. This is like less than a day old, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
This is kind of like Log4j, but for VoIP.
Right.
Basically there was a
PJ
library
SIP.
that was being used. Yeah. So open source, right? And this is very popularly used in Asterix, especially the unmanaged ones. So if you haven't seen this, you should probably go and update all of these.
They're 8s. Nice. That should be fairly easy to attack if the APIs are exposed.
Yeah, you should probably go and update these things.
Well, I know what I'm doing this weekend, you jerk.
Super right away. I mean, listen, it came out, it popped up in my feed. I'm like, oh, what's this? And then there it was.
I'm spinning up my RJ SIP lab. Thanks.
Yep. So they're all pretty high, right? 8.1. And so hey, go find where you're at. And if you haven't updated your infrastructure in a really long time to update your VoIP open source stuff out there.
And this gets back into the question, like if you were on, let's say Digium, I don't remember who they sold to, but the paid version of Asterix, it's still basically the same code base. I'm wondering if you can even ask them to answer, do they still use PJ SIP, right? Like that's kind of back to that software bill of materials conversation or SBOM.
Yeah. So Digium actually bought all of the, they are the last man standing in Asterix world, right? Like they went out and bought all these customizers, all these managed versions of Asterix, and they still have they actually still control the open Asterix solution, right? But Digium is actually, they got acquired by, Digium had the rights to all of that, and they got acquired by Sangoma.
Sangoma.
So Sangoma Digium is one company now, and like now they have they own that whole bubble, right? But the problem is, to your point, Matt, like it's very fractured, right? It's like Android. You could be on this version of Android, like everybody's all over the place. Whereas
my custom Android version,
but iPhone's a lot harder to do that, right? Because like they control that. So just got to go out and stay on top of your stuff. I know a lot of people set it and forget it. Now you need to not forget it.
And by set it and forget it, you mean over a toilet in a bathroom down the hall that's been running the same Switchvox appliance for 307.4 years. Yeah, I've seen it.
It ran. If it wasn't broke, didn't fix it, right?
Swear to goodness, I've seen it. It's nuts. Yeah,
but like an old NetWare server in the corner, right?
right. Oh, man,
are those things still around? I hope not.
What was it? Somebody told me they found a 2003 server. Go ahead, George. Pete.
I still have my original Novell server.
Nice.
Like prior to ELS. I mean,
this is almost as bad as the picture you sent me last night with ketchup on your cheesesteak.
Oh, it was so good though. That was gourmet puree.
Why do that?
That was gourmet puree, George.
I don't know what happened to you, man. You went down to South Carolina and like things went off the rails.
Always put ketchup on my cheesesteaks.
I think that's what I would.
Tony Luke's doing that, really?
No, they don't. They take the ketchup away, man. You don't even have that option.
Yep. No,
I actually, so that's probably, I can't eat bread. I'm allergic to wheat. But when I was still punishing myself and eating wheat and not knowing what it was that was bothering me, man, a good cheesesteak, like that literally is like the one thing I really, really, really miss. That softish bread with the cheese just running over. Oh my goodness. It's amazing.
No, I mean, listen, for like, there are places outside of Philadelphia, may I add. Like if you go to South Philly, you order cheesesteak and you don't want the bread, they just put it on a plate and say, here you go. There are
Right.
places that try and like wrap it in lettuce.
Yeah, it's not the same.
It's not the same. It's not the same. But yeah,
I will tell you, George, that this is a pretty good cheesesteak. It's people from Sewell, New Jersey. They owned a place right in Camden, and they had a couple places.
I don't know. People from New Jersey, they worry me.
They were good. It was good. We enjoyed it. Even with that puree.
Yeah. Good news is we're going to make sure people come back to Philadelphia, including the beard on the screen, and we'll make sure he gets something without bread. But all things considered, Matt, we still got a few minutes left. It looks like, and listen, I'm not trying, every time I bring up NCE, my Penn Patterson leaves the screen, but it looks like there was a bit of a grace period applied, right? So saw a couple of alerts coming out of your team about, I think things got pushed back to the 15th
30
of this
days,
month.
Yeah. Was it 30? I thought it was 30 days, but yeah.
Yeah, so it may have been extended further, right? Because like there's like this huge bubble of orders trying to matriculate through.
Yeah. Yep.
That's number one. And hey, just because I pay attention to the team stuff. So one of the things that was hidden back when they made this announcement a year ago on all the major outlets was that Microsoft was going to include the audio conferencing bridge, which was a $4 SKU before NCE, to every business standard premium E1, E3, E5, right? So that's effectively the Zoom kind of method where when you send a meeting request out in an Outlook or whatever,
adds
it now
a phone
gives
number,
them a dial-in option, right?
Yeah.
And then you can select your country and all that other jazz, right? If you're out of the US. So same with other territories. So for some reason, not sure, but people moved on to NCE and then found that where was it? It still didn't show up. So apparently you have to go at a $0 SKU for that now.
So doubling the order as well. There's some other things too in the way that the transactions happen. We saw more than just a scale up cost to those ads. So without getting too deep into it, there's multiple transactions needed of API that wasn't the case before. You could just order a SKU, but now you have to order a SKU and then go back in and order a SKU change to make the change equal. So what ended up happening was in our system, we created massive horizontal scaling problems. You could vertically scale all you wanted, but we couldn't get through the horizontal problem of that. So short story is the team are still working on that at PAX8, and we're still in some ways suffering from some of it.
You and everyone else, I'm sure.
But it's a learning curve. And I think that it's kind of some Microsoft, some us, and that's the reason it's a learning curve. So
well, for everyone else, like there was a trick that I heard right before March 1st. Some people were like, oh, go and cancel your subscription and then recreate it the same day so you could reset.
It just created 4 times the API stuff for us. It created more challenges. Okay. But I will take the time for our teams, to anybody that's watching this, to just apologize for some of the friction it's caused and some of the pain that it's caused as this goes. And while it's not completely in our hands, we still feel it and it sucks. And I've been in your shoes and it really sucks. So Darren, if you were in that bubble, buddy, I love you, and hugs coming your way. I'm sorry. But teams are working overnight on it. So.
Yeah, hang in there, guys. I have a feeling, I've not asked, I'm just guessing that a lot of manual things are happening right now. That's my gut feeling. And imagine 100,000 transactions a day or whatever it is, and imagine a human being having to touch many of those.
There's definitely a lot of people staring at the paint drying, right? Watching the queues. And is this going to stay? Are we good? Have we caught up? Is Microsoft good on this now? Are we great on the code? Are we scaled enough? It's like, it feels very much like my MSP days, right? When you're going through this and you have a partner and things aren't working, like HL7 interfaces come to mind in my mind. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you in flashback there. Yeah. All right. I have to drop, guys. I have a back-to-backs, but thank you so much for having me on. I always love seeing the two of you.
Good to see you, Matt.
See y'all.
All right. Well, we're gonna go radio style for the rest of the show. So anyone that's dialed in, you can unmute and jump in if you want. And then of course I got my buddy Pete here. There we go. Back to Texas. Are you prepared to drive? Are you prepared to drive to the great state of Texas again?
Baby, my truck went in for service yesterday. It's all ready. Trailer's getting all set.
What wasn't that for a windshield?
Well, I did the service, made sure we were all good.
Okay.
And this weekend, the trailer gets in and we're gonna put up that wall so we can cover the car and still have stuff up front.
Awesome.
So
well, I'm pumped for it.
we're in good
Darren,
shape.
are you gonna visit us in Texas, Darren?
Pete, I'll plot your route. We'll stop at each of what along the way, and very efficiently.
So it sounds like Darren will be joining us. But now
I don't know. My plot is, Darren, I drive and I don't stop. So I may not drive as fast as George though.
Well, hold on. Number one, I don't know what you're talking about. Number two, you're gonna have to plot not just Chick-fil-A, you're gonna have to plot In-N-Out and also Boston Market according to
In-N-Out is just doesn't do it for me.
Boston Market has a buy one get one free individual meal coupon yesterday and today. Take advantage. Excellent deal.
Can't do Boston Market either.
Oh, wait a minute. What's your knock on In-N-Out?
Look, when you're driving, you don't want to stop because you ate something. You know what I mean? You get where I'm going with it?
I hear what you're saying, but In-N-Out.
So,
like if I'm going into Texas, I'm probably stopping by around the corner from the airport to go pick up some In-N-Out.
If you're in Texas, you shouldn't be having any of that. It should just be barbecue. You know that. Come on.
Well, I didn't say I wasn't going to eat barbecue, but like I don't get In-N-Out here. You're the one over there in California. You can get In-N-Out next door.
But see, so for me, it's like, In-N-Out, it's all right. I can do it. But what's exciting me is we're going to be in Fort Worth, and that's where the brewery, or not the brewery, but the distillery for TX whiskey is. So
I knew this was coming.
You knew it was coming, and I'm stopping.
What's your thing with TX? I don't understand. It's
good. It's a really great low cost quality whiskey, but the distillery has a bunch of experimental ones that they can sell there and nowhere else. And they've got a sherry cask and a plum cask, I believe it is, that you can only get at the distillery. So I'll be loading up. I'll be transferring, over state lines and stuff like that. So
is that legal? I'm not sure.
I don't know. It could be a little Smokey and the Bandit. I might have to step up the pace.
Yeah, isn't it funner just going and visiting the distillery than it really is going through and drinking a lot of it? I know when I went to the Maker's Mark distillery in Loretto, that was so cool to go through and to watch them doing the dipping the waxes in the bottle, and the printing press that they use for the label is one of those old plate type that goes ka-chunk, ka-chunk, and that's how they actually print the labels for the bottles. And I don't know if they still do, but it was when I went there, a few years ago.
Keep going. I'm sure he's bringing it. I'm sure he's bringing it over the barrel.
A Maker's cask over, huh?
So one of the things that's really cool about TX is the caps. And I don't know if you can see, this cap's got green leather in it. So it's a wooden cap with the cork in the middle. But if you bring old leather, they actually will take the leather, clean it up, refinish it, and every cap is different using the leather that people bring in or that they buy in bulk.
Oh, that's very cool. Very cool.
So
you like
it's
personalize
like Blanton, spell Blanton's off of the caps.
So I'm waiting for the B VoIP to go along with my mug.
We were talking since Pete over here, he likes to brew his own beer, right? So we were cool. Maybe we'll come up with B VoIP beer and then we'll send it out. It's like, but I'm pretty sure shipping alcohol is a problem. Like you can't just ship it.
You can't ship alcohol USPS.
Yeah.
Right.
So
without a permit.
FedEx and UPS are exempt, huh?
Well, you know what, guys? I find that very interesting. Because I just had one of my vendors went through, and it was App River. If I went and listened to a sales presentation, they shipped me a bottle of whiskey.
Huh? I wonder how they did that.
Well,
they did it through Bevmo.
Bevmo.
Yeah, there's ways to do it through distributors and stuff like that. But you know what? You never know. You could get a delivery of a snow globe or perfume because that's legal.
We are recording this, pal.
You know what? It's like the biggest joke out there, right? Like
Yeah.
every now and then we'll send something and a bottle will go and the mailman will go, boy, this doesn't smell like perfume. This smells like a beer. He goes, you want to share? So, but the home brewers send boxes to each other and sampling and all that. But George, there could be something there with a Bevoy beer on a Channel Strong tour.
Wow.
I mean, we could distribute that we don't distribute, right? And we only make 10-gallon batches. So, we're well within the limit, right, of doing that. But we could serve some Bevoy beer at a Channel Strong.
I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll have to figure that out. Good news is, or bad news, those mugs, and they're still in high demand. I still have people asking for them all the time. 25 ounces. It's a lot of booze for one serving. So, make sure
and if you fill 2 of my beers in there, two of those beers, you might as well just sit down for a while because you should.
Exactly right. Well, the good news is, because Darren's like, well, you better be eating barbecue. I am sure we will be eating barbecue all throughout their stops in Texas, Darren.
I'm gonna have to. I wasn't planning on this, but now, I don't know. I'm gonna have to take a look at my schedule here.
He's like, hold on, what are those dates? Yeah,
See.
coming up, man. They're in 3 weeks.
Sooner than I. Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, 3 weeks. So we're gonna be on the road, going all throughout the great state.
Well, then, Darren, I can give you a ride in the GTR since I rode in your Audi.
Okay. Very good. Very good. I'll have to consider it.
Well, if you're bringing it back here to California, man, there is a microbrewery in every other corner around here.
We are coming to California, but it's not going to be until October. Yeah, it's quite a ways. Yeah, 8. I'm going to reshare this since
October 19th and 20th. October 19th in San Diego and October 20th in Irvine.
Here's the whole year. We have it all scheduled out, guys. So Texas is at the end of this month, but then go through the rest of the country here, except for somehow we keep on missing the Northwest, but we'll eventually get there. If they're open.
Are there MSPs in the Great Plains there? I mean, all kidding aside, but there are.
There are.
But think about how distant that land is, right? There's the concentration of cities.
Somebody has to service the farms.
Yeah, but so what do you pull from a 2,000-mile radius to get people to come to your event? That's the tough part of that area.
The MSP who's hosting us in that area could be having us on a farm. What do you think? We'll do like a little bonfire and hayride. Yeah, that's perfect for the alcohol, right?
Couple dueling banjos.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. Hey, good music.
Yeah, Brent. Yeah, we were. That little. You were on that very first. Us stopping in that Temecula, that very first Channel Strong. That was 3 weeks, and we kind of threaded through a whole bunch of natural disasters. I felt. Somehow we made it into California and out.
Yeah, but you did a great job of it, though.
It was an interesting, 8,000 miles on the road. Fun times. So Darren, I got you on here. So apparently you got stuck in the bubble of orders that didn't get processed right away with the NCE stuff.
Oh yeah. And I don't hold it against PAX8 really, but of course we were figuring out stuff last minute, and I paid a guy to work that whole night. Because things started taking, just wasn't happening. Part of it was us figuring things out, and we have a couple clients I'm not sure that I want to be in the 1-year scenario with, just in case. And we were kind of having that debate. And then so we talked about this, we made a list, the whole thing. And then when we started to try to do stuff, he's like, nothing's actually happening here. I'm like, okay. So yeah, there were obviously thousands or more doing the same thing. So, And then I got some conflicting information that they extended it through just the 2nd, but we originally thought it was the 15th. So now I'm still not sure what the
They've
deal
come
is.
out and publicly said it's the 15th. I mean, I read that.
I don't know. I got something else yesterday from PAX that said it was 3-1 and 3-2. So I, you know what? I don't know. I really don't know. The whole thing is such a, it just insane. It's truly insane, but it's Microsoft. And my point earlier, you know, my point earlier on the Microsoft thing, which you said, Peter, or Pete, I should say, sorry, is they're trying to go by either one. They're trying to take the endpoint market, and you know, look, I'm all for better security. You know that. I want the best security possible. Yesterday, literally yesterday, we had a threat locker block a malicious file, which was then reported by Blackpoint, and they locked the system down. And it was like, wow, this stuff is actually, you know, this stuff is actually working. And it was a nice reassurance of that. And I'm kind of
hold on, pause for a second. You're using Threat Locker and Blackpoint together?
correct. Blackpoint is they're different. The Blackpoint is MDR, EDR, whatever you want to call it, on top of our web root. And you still need, I mean, Threat Locker is a different, you still need traditional security, preferably with MDR, if you're serious about it, in addition to having Threat Locker. Threat Locker should not replace, and they say this, I mean, it shouldn't replace your security stack. I mean, in this case, it blocked it, but it was also detected, and then the machine was taken offline. Had we not had Threat Locker, it would have only limited the damage to that one machine, which is the point of having an MDR that's monitoring it, and they took it off, off the network. The point is, I have this security stuff. I've spent a lot of time and, effort in terms of establishing it and blah, blah, blah. And now Microsoft's, oh, here's it for free. And, just turn it on and it's yours. And we're going to handle it. So we have your OS, we have your updates, and we have your security. Like, I don't want security from Microsoft to be my only endpoint protection. You know what I mean? I don't like the concept of them pushing it on people and including it in the license. If you want to include it, make it additional.
I remember doing a webinar with Ryan Burton from PAX8. Maybe that not too far away from this time last year, and he was saying that business premium, or what they now call, it's like used to be business standard, business premium. I think it's like business basic, business standard, whatever that next level up from the base SKU, that original $12.50 SKU, the $20 one. Apparently that can cover like 70 to 80% of the things that you would need, right? Because Microsoft just throws a bunch of stuff into there for email, for, right, SSO, for, conditional login, and then now, this Microsoft Defender thing. So, I mean, they are definitely rolling it up.
Yeah, for a lot of reasons.
I think Darren, Darren's like a lot of MSPs. He's afraid to put everything in one bucket. Sure.
And by the way, at the same time, you have Datacon sending out their survey literally this week on endpoint protection, which they're clearly considering getting into. And, the server, I mean, basically, what are you using? Would you consider switching to our offering? Blah, blah, blah. So it's like, at the same week that Microsoft announced that you can get it for free with what everybody generally has. So
it's interesting because, Datacon obviously has been around for some time, and they've definitely crushed the category that they were in. I still wonder if networking resurrects itself, or if that's totally done. And I think a lot of people have that question. But they definitely, they just did an acquisition of a security platform, 60 days ago, right?
Yeah, which is still, another. I mean, they want to look. It's clear they want to have the full security stack too, potentially. Which I also don't want my security stack to be the same as my backup vendor. It's like, whether they're different products or not, if there's a total, the worst case scenario incident, you have to think that it's, you're at risk, right? So I like having certain vendors for certain things. As much as I hate dealing with too many vendors, it is, I do prefer that approach.
I find this conversation kind of interesting here, because let's stop and talk about other industries. Let's say, for example, your vehicle. Isn't it interesting to say that if I have a Ford, okay, well, the only way that I'm going to accept something is if I choose an aftermarket part for that. However, in the industry for that, you find greater value in having the factory original part for things for your vehicle. Isn't it interesting? In our industry now, we find that the aftermarket thing is far superior to the OEM. Is that?
Well, I mean, the part of it, again, specifically with Microsoft, again, everybody's stuck with them. It is what it is. And for them to want to control the whole, the security, largely the security is designed. I mean, it's their software that, I mean, like everybody else's, that has, we're running Windows and we're running their stuff, their applications. And now they're going to say, okay, well, we make the buggy software and we're going to now secure it for you. And I don't know. I don't like that approach.
But Walter pops in on chat. He says, it's kind of a trust issue with Microsoft. Okay. It's to everybody's point, right? I think we're in a little bit of uncharted territory because the mindset this whole time has been, hey, one vendor, better support, you can consolidate and maybe negotiate better pricing. And we all know who's out there doing that in a large way. Now it's hey, back to Darren's point, kind of want to separate my risk out. And it's funny because in an earlier conversation, somebody's like, hey, your insurance company might now start asking you what upstream vendors you're using as part of your process. I mean, not too long ago, we saw a notice from one of the insurance companies internally for using these products to not use them. And then they kind of backtracked after a little while. So I don't know what that means, right? I don't know what that means for a greater industry, but yeah, I think it's interesting now moving forward that all this focus is on security, rightfully so, but you can't stop doing the normal stuff either, right? You can't just stop servicing, maintaining, replacing, life cycling. I mean, all of that stuff still needs to happen. So I hope everybody's capturing their time in the end, right? Because that's what we're talking about. I mean, Darren, you're a big threat locker guy. Is it as low time as they say it is, or do you actually have to put in some time into it?
You have to put a little bit of time into it and learn it. But I will say their support is phenomenal, and their training, their academy, and as well as from the onboarding to the training. I mean, they're there to help you get through it, and largely 90% of the time, it's going to be almost totally seamless. And the issues we've had, which have been with some financial software that some of our clients use, we've approached them with, and they've worked with us on it, and so at this point, we've been using it since July of last year. It's very hands-off in that respect. And as your team gets more knowledgeable on how to handle things yourself and what to do. But again, their support is really, really great. Unlike virtually every vendor I've ever dealt with that consistently reachable and good support is a anomaly today, unfortunately, from what I've seen.
So I know you were actually in Orlando last week because we're hanging out with you and eating some good Chick-fil-A, which apparently it's slightly different according to you. By the way,
George, that's not slightly different. That was unbelievably different, and I will go back to duplicate that experience and see if it's the same or it was an anomaly.
Okay.
Is that the
Lightly, the
ride
delicately
to get chicken that was 2 miles away?
Well, let's not revisit that, but there's a better way to get there. But the end result was pretty phenomenal.
So I think, number one, how did you like last week? And number two, I mean, they did introduce what sounds like maybe an overlap in feature set with Blackpoint where they can now do network management at the end.
No, that's not what it is. No, I'm
Okay.
sorry. I will correct you. What they introduced is something that essentially mitigates the need for a VPN. It's the way that they're handling accessing remote resources. So it's not they didn't introduce like an EDR offering or a security offering like that. It's interesting. I haven't looked at it yet. They have a thing coming out on it soon to dive into it in a deeper way. But overall,
so it's a pitch at a different way of VPN.
it's yeah. If I'm understanding it correctly, which I think I am, that's what it is. It's not replacing an MDR vendor by any means.
All right. So how'd you like last week?
It was great, and I think anybody that was there would tell you the average maturity of the people there, that you're just taking security more seriously, and it's definitely different from other events, which shall go unnamed. So yeah, I think, and it was a good size. It wasn't too big, it wasn't too small, in my opinion. And you could go and talk to to different people, and I liked it overall.
Cool. And you got your rubber ducky and your pineapple?
Yeah, you get the rubber duck. Well, you don't get a pineapple, but they demonstrated it. Yeah.
Okay.
But I have the rubber duckies, which you can have mine if you like it.
I'm good. I got my big ducky. Anyway, that was a cool event. Pete, you snuck down there last week too. You got to check out the scene.
Yeah, it seemed to be a good event. I mean, I didn't get into any sessions or any of that, but everybody was talking positively, and obviously when we were at the party, everybody was engaged, and certainly reps were there, and everybody was engaged with them, having additional conversation around the sessions. So, of course, there may have been a beer or two flowing. So, just saying.
Good party. Yeah, I have to say.
But just a few. Reasonable, of course. Well, there's like 6 or 7 events in Orlando this year. I mean, it feels like everybody obviously concentrated on either Florida, Texas, or Vegas this year. I wouldn't be surprised. I know nothing. I know that Datacon's probably going to be in September. Darren's like, oh yeah, really? I would say that there's a high probability. I've talked to nobody. I'm just guessing that they probably end up in Florida. What do you think?
I think it would be hard to disagree. I mean, it's a point that has proven in the last 2 years through the pandemic that you could still move around and do things. So might give them a little bit more assurances than others. Although yeah. Texas is a good wild card too.
No, they did Austin. They had a great event in Austin. Now what, 3 or 4 years ago now. But I can't imagine them going another year without getting their event off. I think we're gonna definitely see one this year. Yeah, for sure. That and rumor is we might be seeing a boat in our future.
Yeah. Well, that'll be a new planning session.
I mean, it's happening. I don't know if you did.
I know it's going to be a different type of planning session.
Okay. Yes. Event by water is always great. I'm curious to see, as all of this stuff rolls out, are people, I realized when we were in Florida was maxed out, right? It was like the start of that spring break season. I'm curious to see how many MSPs get out, right, of the basement, the garage, if they're still running an office, and actually get out to an event. I would almost question if there will be at more than one, but I think we're going to see a lot of travel this year. So much so that I think that I think everybody heard Spirit and Frontier are combining into one airline. I'm going to sign you up for that, right, Darren?
Yes, that is fine. Maybe.
Are you sure about that, buddy? No. I don't know if your points are going to work on Spirit tier.
I still have my.
I'm kidding. Please don't even.
I still have my credits to apply to Spirit from when I got stranded in Detroit.
Oh, that's right. They just outright canceled your flight.
Yeah, showed up and
if anybody only has the option to fly Spirit, I'll give you some of my miles just so you don't have to. Okay, I'm sorry. It's like I'll
20 minutes before boarding. Yeah.
I mean, listen, Southwest and AirTran merged back in the day. That turned out all right.
Well,
Southwest
now
they weren't.
Now that we've grown a little bit down here in Myrtle Beach, we do now have Southwest. We did have AirTran and they left, and now Southwest made a re-entry, but the airport is, doubled in size now because of the amount of people that are coming down for vacations and things of that nature.
You can just drive to Atlanta if you want a good flight.
Yeah, well, Atlanta's only a couple hours drive, and Charlotte's only a couple hour drive for us. Charleston,
Savannah. You're like a second or third tier airport snuck in between.
No, we're like Jackson Hole, a little bit bigger than Jackson Hole.
Has anyone? I think I actually just saw a guy that I went to school with. Had just went to Jackson Hole. I was like, I thought that was only for the people on Silicon Valley, man.
Love
Remember
Jackson.
that show?
That's a great place to go. It's a great airport to fly into.
What's there? What's there?
You're there for nature, man. You're there to unwrap and unravel and unplug. And
if you don't feel inspired when you go through and you take a look at the rivers and the Tetons there, buddy, I'm not sure if you're alive.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've never been. I've never. It took the HBO show Silicon Valley to me to be like, where is this place and why is everyone going?
Let me know. I've got connections there. I'll take you there and I can show you some of the cool stuff, George.
Okay. I guess I'm gonna have to put that on my to-do list after we hit the was it Bend, Oregon, so we can visit the last Blockbuster. You see that Netflix series, the Netflix expose?
Yeah.
Last Blockbuster. Who would have thought?
We don't go close enough to any of those to drive up there, though.
That's the problem. It's literally like there's nothing there. It's like Blockbuster. That's it, and a lot of trees. A lot of trees. All right, guys. It was an interesting show. We started off with Matt Lee, who took us down that rabbit hole of Microsoft land, and then just had fun ever since. So, not that Matt Lee's not fun. Trust me, he's a good time, especially on a bus. You can mark that down.
Yes.
To have Matt Lee, it doesn't get better than Matt Lee. Let's just make that clear.
He is his own brand for sure. Maybe he'll come in on a whiskey operation there, Pete, and then just have like a beard coming out of the bottle. What do you think?
There you go.
He likes whiskey. He likes whiskey.
I agree. He definitely does. Who doesn't like a good whiskey?
We might have shared a couple old fashions or something on the bus. I
don't know what you're talking about.
We weren't driving.
You heard,
we weren't driving.
You didn't mention it. Another thing, for anybody using Connect Booster, their new pricing. I don't use it, but it's in the wake of what they're
Yeah. Well, we can talk about that on the next episode, but that's
Perfect.
Seems like it hit the internet by storm, I guess. Yeah. Well, I'm sure by Tuesday other things would have hashed out, so we'll find out. Make sure to come back then, Darren, so we can bring it up.
Sure, happy to bring it up.
Awesome. All right. Well, that's another one in the books, guys. It's always a good time. Walter puts out the theory. Of course, Kaseya bought them. We'll find out. We'll see on Tuesday. But catch everybody Tuesdays and Thursdays, 1:00 Eastern time, or 24 hours a day on online. And we'll keep on doing this as it's been a good time. And we'll catch you guys next week. See ya.
Thanks, George.
Bye.